All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, yesterday, the Senate finally got their act together and extended the Paycheck Protection Program by $350 billion, nearly a week after the program, which was loan money to nearly one-fifth of American small businesses, ran out of money. And as Crystal and I discussed yesterday, this is woefully inadequate. It took just days for the originally appropriated $350 billion to run out. And we all know that the administration of that initial funding was far from perfect. Why exactly does it have a cap on it in the first place? But we need to focus here on why I'm not just getting increasingly pessimistic, but downright despondent about how we're going to emerge from this crisis. It's because Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer held up a deal on this legislation for more than a week. And in the course of those negotiations, they got $25 million. Yes, you heard me correctly, for coronavirus. They got $75 billion for the corrupt hospital industry, which has already been bailed out the first time around, and $60 billion in additional disaster loans. This is an outrage no matter how you look at it. Republicans are looking at a deal they could have gotten behind 12 days ago and extended funding to struggling small businesses who likely had to fire or furlough workers in the midst of this delay. And of course, yesterday on the show, we discussed how progressive Democrats like AOC said they would not support any type of bill like this without direct cash payments monthly and other big-scale interventions for working people. As friend of the show, Zach Carter, put it, quote, Democrats spent 3 weeks talking up the coronavirus bill as a grand phase 4 where they would do the really good progressive stuff they didn't do in the bailout. Now they have a new bill, and Schumer says they'll do the good stuff next time. As recent guest Jeffrey Stein of the Washington Post put it in the terms of the wish list that you've heard from, progressive Democrats, the bill lacks hazard pay, money for state and local governments, election security, oversight, food stamp money, rent freeze, more stimulus checks. In terms of the right populist senators, much of the same can be said. Marco Rubio was asking for an extension of this program more than a week ago because it seemed like the most obvious thing at the time. But the fact that this negotiation took so long just to give pittance to American small business has convinced me more than anything that we're screwed in the long run. And as I predicted before the last bailout, they would throw crumbs and pennies at those forced to stay home before they took a lengthy vacation. Not even I could have predicted that Congress would have had the hubris to take off until May 4th, quote, absent an emergency. And after this, it only seems even more likely. Why does a spending cap on the small business program exist at all? Why is that literally not the baseline of discussion, as 22 million Americans are unemployed? A National Bureau of Economic Research paper released yesterday says 43% of small businesses are temporarily closed, and that business overall have decreased their workforce by 40%. Yes, 40%. And here's the thing. It's about to get worse because before people with cash on hand begin to run out, they also find that, quote, many small businesses are financially fragile. For example, the median business has more than $10,000 in monthly expenses and less than 1 month of cash on hand. That 1 month of cash on hand starts to run out. Let's check the calendar. That's right about now, which means they're screwed because we all know that even more political games will be played for the next extension and that even when it comes out, it will be many days late and billions of dollars short. We need to put an end to this. We need to put an end to it now. And I don't care what it takes, and I don't think that you do either, because in many cases, this is a matter of your livelihood. As Senator Josh Hawley put it, quote, we need to get the Paycheck Protection Program funded now to take care of small businesses who have been waiting in line for weeks. But we also need to recognize the limitations of this program. It's just not adequate to the needs of the moment. We have 22 million Americans unemployed. We need something faster and simpler that can get to work on a bigger scale and get people their jobs back now. We need to get our economy back on its feet by getting workers on their feet. We need to rehire the unemployed and protect every job. That should be our focus going forward. This would entail, as my friend Charles Lehman put it, the largest jobs program in American history. And it's easy. You don't have to hire anybody. You literally just have to cut businesses checks. That is something at least the government knows how to do. All it takes is a matter of political will. We need to immediately begin picking people's paychecks and letting businesses rehire, or we are going to live in an even more plutocratic and oligarchical America than we did before all of this even began. Rashida Tlaib has introduced a similar plan, and I hope you join me in putting as much public pressure on both Democratic and Republican establishments in getting whomever is needed to actually pay attention to these two plans so we can all get started yesterday. And I just continue to be outraged by this, Crystal, because, after all these machinations, after all the holdup, 25 million in additional testing for coronavirus?
And how is that a concession, by the way?
Yeah, exactly.
Shouldn't we all be wanting more testing?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, more money for testing. How is that a concession?
Mitch McConnell said. He was like, we could have agreed to this 12 days ago. And I'm like, this is what I mean. I mean, they held out all this stuff for so long. He's like, no, don't worry. We're going to do that. To the progressive, they say, we're going to do this stuff next time.
Yeah.
And then everybody is left holding the bag. 12 days. Look, this in a slow-moving, in a crisis situation, what we needed 12 days ago is not what we need now.
So
we needed the extension 12 days ago. What we need now is the largest jobs program in American history. Economists right now predicting 4.5 million additional unemployed tomorrow. We're going to find out the numbers live on the show, and we'll bring them to you. That brings it to 26.6 million? That's an insane number. That's almost 1/10 of the country that is unemployed. I mean, this is just a completely untenable situation. And one thing I wanted to bring you all was Joe Weisenthal is a great Bloomberg pundit, works for Bloomberg News. He put it this way this morning, and I love this. It's a political choice. Putting these people out of work, all of our misery, all of our suffering.
Absolutely.
This is a policy choice. Washington decided that it was better to let people suffer, scramble for pennies on the dollar at SBA loans, unemployment, call your state unemployment, get these additional benefits. Nobody can figure out what the hell it all means. I can't figure out what it means. And I get paid to do this. When in so many other different countries, they're just like, yeah, you're going to get 80% of your paycheck.
Right.
Why is that crazy?
Yeah.
It's not a crazy position. And yet you hear there are two fringe groups within both parties are the only ones even proposing it.
No.
And it's like, that is what makes me really despair for all of our future.
If you poll the American public, Data for Progress has been doing some really good polling on this. They support the most radical, crazy, populist ideas that have been proposed, $2,000 a month, overwhelming support. But they are not the people, the American people are not who actually get listened to in this town. Nobody here does anything without being forced to do it. And so who do they listen to? Who is organized? Well, from the jump, because they're always organized, all of the big business and Wall Street and all of the big interests were immediately in lawmakers' ears, getting their
K Street was ready to go.
Absolutely, getting their little special provisions, getting their bailouts, remember Boeing's bailout written specifically for them, this big real estate tax giveaway, all those things. They were organized, ready to go. They had that legislation ready to roll out, and that's who these people were listening to. Now they're starting to be another group, a right-wing group, whose position is just open it back up. Right. We're done, open it up. And they're willing to actually go out in the streets, risking their health and, by the way, the health of their communities, to not comply and say, look, we are not going to do what you want us to do unless you give us our way. And guess what? It's actually working. You see in Georgia, this is not the right approach, by the way. This is not what I support. But it shows you the power of organizing and taking actions into your own hands. They're out there pushing for, what I think is a deeply dangerous and wrong-headed approach. They're getting their way. Those who are calling for broader payments to workers, to focus on small businesses, they're not organized in the same way. They aren't exerting pressure in this town. And again, these people don't do anything without being forced and shamed into doing it, especially not the things you want them to do. And so that's where we stand.
Let's think about those protests. It's deep nihilism. It's like, you know what? You people, the government, are so incapable that we're just going to go out and risk our lives to put food on the table. And that is actually the reality of the situation for a lot of people. I'll look at all the grocery store workers, essential workers, all of these other people. And the main point I want to get across, this was a choice. They decided that they were going to put everybody out of work and not pay you. They literally made that decision. They were going to, and by not pay you, they're like, well, we'll beef up the unemployment, an additional 6 weeks of this and all this.
If you're willing to call 1,000 times.
If you're willing to call 1,000 times or wait 2 weeks, or can you wait 2 weeks on your rent? Your landlord going to take that well? I don't think mine would. I don't think most of them would. What are they going to do? They have to pay up too, right?
Right.
This entire system is literally can collapse before our eyes, and you have massive small business closure, 43% close, reduction of workforce. Next week, it's going to get even worse. Every single day, there's no consumer spending in our economy, probably headed for a massive depression, absent huge government intervention, and they can't do the very basic thing. Again, 70%, I don't care. The bargain it away, start at 100, get to 70. If you just got people like 70% of their paycheck, everybody could live.
Right.
And everybody could have
make it
some
through.
security. Give the unemployment to the people who aren't employed. Everybody will stay home. The protests will end. Nobody will go crazy.
Right.
I mean, this is, again, and this is what I think we've talked with Ira Miose Frimpong, Funky Academic, about this, which is that why are those protesters getting their way? Or why are they being heard, media coverage and all this? Because they're so nihilistic and fed up with government that they're just like, open it up so we can at least do something, because you're not doing anything for us.
Yeah.
And that is, look, these protesters are being smeared, and some of you might agree with that, but I think it's wrong, because anybody out there who wants to go out and put food on the table because the government's not backfilling that, again, you were ordered to stay home. And when you're ordered to stay home, you are due certain benefits. And
right.
It's just like you just watch these people preen about 25 million in testing and 350 billion in small businesses. That'll be gone in 6 days,
right.
a week. We're going to be back to the negotiating table.
No,
what are they going to do then? They're going to wait another 12 days?
It's pathetic. It's absolutely that there's a cap on this to start with is pathetic. If you qualify, you should get the money. It's not that complicated. That should have been the stance from the beginning when we knew it was going to be woefully inadequate from the jump. And let's talk about Madam Speaker, who's supposed to be such an incredible legislator, such a master negotiator. The House hasn't even put up their own bill. I mean, it's just like pathetic abdication of leadership in terms of who they actually are catering to. It's pathetic and grotesque, the amount of money being flung at one very well-off segment of society while everyone else is left to scrounge. And that's a reality of where we are. And look, we've said this before and say it again. There's no heroes here. No. Don't rely on these people to come to your rescue, because they're not going to. They're not going to do anything unless they're absolutely forced to. And I think that has been made entirely clear during all these negotiations.
Maybe it's time to force them. All right. I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.